close to the original design, which happened to get in the way with the grades and, I mean, it's real close to the original design, but they had to, and it, like I said, it's not like they're ripping down everything and, I mean, they're literally scooching the pole over, just a little bit. Just because it's where the elevation is and the sidewalk is proposed, it's close, but it's not close enough to work.
Thank you, Tim. Any other council members have any comments that they'd like to ask Todd? And if not, I'd like Todd, you to continue with the rest of the status of the project, please.
Yeah, he can give a status. I'll ask
Okay.
my questions.
Go ahead.
Just approximately 6 weeks has passed since the intersection was closed. Minor traffic issues and mobility through the corridor have arisen, but are quickly being addressed by working together with the contractor, town staff, and residents as they arise.
Okay.
And construction continues to progress at this time and is within a week. We compared to the schedule. The contractor does foresee the ability to make up a few days during other site activities.
Super. Keep the gas on the contractors to stay in our project, in our town. I know how this game works. We've seen it all too well. So please, be the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Please be that guy.
We're about
Thank you.
5 years late on that
Randy?
squeaky wheel thing.
I have a question. It seems like throughout this process, and this isn't the first time we've kind of felt this way, is that we really don't know who our people are advocating for the town in these kind of projects. And we feel like, in this case, there's really nobody. That NIPSCO was allowed to kind of be at the front of delaying this project to start with, and now we have another change by NIPSCO. Is anybody looking out for our interest? Is it you guys that are supposed to? Is it God that's supposed to look out for our interest? Who's it supposed to be?
When considering NIPSCO, the utilities went through the proper process in getting their relocation plans reviewed.
What is that process?
It's laid out by NDOT, what that process is.
So who, they go through NDOT for their moving of the,
It's a
The
utility
utilities.
coordinator, and that utility coordinator on this project was a Structure Point representative.
okay. So you're supposed to be looking out for our interest, but you're also looking out for NIPSCO's interest?
We can only review what NIPSCO provides as part of their relocation plan. We can't dictate or request any certain aspects of it.
So we're at the mercy of NIPSCO, essentially.
Essentially, yes.
Wow. I didn't realize that NIPSCO ran government.
With NDOT projects, unfortunately, I think this is what we've seen more times than not.
I don't care what the state law is. The state law is garbage. If the local community can't be represented through this by somebody in these sorts of negotiations, and we end up with change orders and additional cost to a community and additional hassle, this stuff has an adverse impact on the public when these things aren't addressed up front. And when we hire a construction inspection firm, American Structure Point, we expect a little bit of advocacy, but it looks like Structure Point also works on behalf of NIPSCO. So, man, there's a lot of single hands in one cookie jar.
I'll tell you what,
It goes back
I've never seen
decades.
a garbage design like that by any other roundabout in northwest Indiana, and I travel a lot of them.
I'm just very, I guess I'm taken aback by this whole thing, so.
It doesn't help that probably 50 years ago or more substations were built right here next to True Value, so it's brutal. There's no question about it.
Okay.
Thank you,
Those are my
Todd. Thank you for the update.
questions. Thanks.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, council members.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
We will now move into public comment for items that are on the agenda. If anybody would like to come up, state their name and address for the record, now would be the time for that. Oh, hi there, Father John. I didn't see you earlier.
May I?
You may. Name and address for the record, sir.
Father John Kowalczyk, 10717 West 134th Place, Cedar Lake, Indiana. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, we ask for your guidance this night. We ask you to send your Holy Spirit to be upon the council members and all those gathered in this room. May our deliberations, actions, thoughts, and words truly be for the benefit of this town and her citizens. Guide us, strengthen us in all that we say and all that we do. Amen.
Best public comment ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else, public comment? podium is yours, if so.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Gross, 8505 West 140th Avenue, in Cedar Lake.
Hi, Bob.
I'm here to speak about the core project again. I did prepare a formal letter. I was asked to do that. As you well know, we have, from our last meeting, I told you we have about $195,000 in our pledge to dredge that we raised quite a few years ago and it's been sitting in the bank for all these years. We're ready to make that pledge to the town. As the letter states, it will come to the town after October 24th when the CD matures. And what I'd like to ask the town to do, or Jennifer, is put in a non-reverting ecosystem restoration fund. So that money stays there until we can use that to make payments for the beginning of the project.
You bet.
So I have some copies here.
If you could pass them out to everybody, that'd be super.
Do you want hands on?
Yeah, I'll pass them around here.
As I said last time, we still feel like, well, as you know, many years have been spent to get to this point. We know since April that the Corps is ready to move forward with this. It's given us the approval, it's on the to-do list, and I think we need to move as fast as possible. I'm hoping that after having 2 to 3 weeks to look at the numbers and everything, we're a little more comfortable with it. I did look at a couple of things myself since the last meeting. Found out for sure I wanted to get the exact acreage of what we have out there that, we purchased with the state of Indiana money, which will be used in the cost share of the project. It's 114 acres. A local realtor who is very familiar with what farmland is worth in Cedar Lake is estimating that today's market is worth $25,000 an acre. That is $2.875 million is what that land would bring to the cost share end of the project when we start working on it. I confirmed it with Kay Whitlock today. I talked to her for over an hour, and that is how it works. It works as cost share. So with the CLIA money that I will forward to the town, currently with the land value approximately, we have about $3 million towards the cost share, which is a good part of the NER plan if we decide to go with that, which is the ecosystem restoration one suggested by the Corps, so everybody knows what we're talking about, rather than the LPP. I talked to Kay about the ins and outs of that. She says we still probably want to shoot for the LPP because there are different things that need to be addressed as you move into the project with that large of a project.
That's right.
So she recommended that, and we can always back it down.
That's correct.
That's what she told me. We talked about different sources of money. I just wanted to make an obvious point. My property at the south end of the lake, the stormwater fee for that, I pay $6,500 a year as a business owner, just one piece of property. I can guarantee you 100% of that water goes into the lake, into Cedar Lake. And I know most of your lakefront properties, that's the same thing. So there's an additional source of money right there, along with possible seed money, TIF money, and other areas that we're going to work on as we move forward. I told you in the last meeting, I'll work as hard as I can to raise money. I was told tonight that we've already set up a meeting with Speaker Boswell, and we hope to meet him here in Cedar Lake within the next month. It's been told me many times, I've told it to you guys, we need to make a commitment to get that type of support from the state and foundations to show that we have matched money. That's how you get the money from the foundation. That's the next step. So I hope you'll consider it tonight. Let's move forward and get this over with. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Well stated, thank you. Anybody else want to come take the podium/microphone, state your name and address for the record regarding anything that is on the agenda, please? Going once, going twice. We will move on. Thank you. Consent agenda. At this point, minutes of the August 20, 2019 for approval, as well as the claims. All town funds, $383,906.64. Wastewater operating, $160,582.86. Water utilities, $73,138.54. Stormwater, $12,744.01. Payroll for August 22nd, 2019, August 30, 2019, and September 5th, 2019, $423,475.69. Manual journal entries, August 1 through 31, 2019. Clubhouse request for the Hanover Central SC Resource Officer Training. Seniors, I'm not sure what SC stands for, but that's what it is. School Corp, thank you. Proclamation, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Jill, do you have that proclamation, or Julie, do you have it? I didn't, it says page 6 or 7, but I didn't see it. If you could read it, please, yes.
September 2019 is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas in the past 12 months, more than 22 Northwest Indiana children have been diagnosed with cancer, some for the second time, and in the past year, another Northwest Indiana child has lost their life due to cancer. Whereas childhood cancer remains the #1 disease-related killer of kids in the United States, 1 in 5 children are terminal at diagnosis. 3 in 5 suffer life-altering impacts of treatment that significantly alter their quality of life. 1 in 285 children will be diagnosed with cancer before the age of 20. And whereas childhood cancer is on the rise, childhood cancers and adult cancers are different, yet we continue to use downsized adult cancer protocols on kids with many times devastating effects. The lack of childhood cancer research has tremendous impact to kids and significant cost to society, now and in the future. Whereas despite these facts, childhood cancer research is vastly and consistently underfunded. Less than 4% of the National Cancer Institute's budget is solely dedicated to childhood cancer research. In 30 years, the FDA has initially approved only 3 new drugs for any childhood cancer, and half of all chemotherapies used for children's cancers are over 30 years old. And whereas the incidence of childhood cancer is on the rise, with an estimated 16,000 children diagnosed every year, that's 43 per day, in the United States alone. Of those 43 children per day, 8 will die, and somewhere in the world, a child is diagnosed every 2 minutes. Whereas the incidence of cancer among adolescents and young adults is increasing at a greater rate than any other age group, except those over 65 years old, and an estimated 2,900 children die each year of cancer in the United States alone. The average age of death for a child with cancer is 8, causing a child to use 69 years of expected life. Whereas many adult cancers can be diagnosed early, in 80% of kids, cancer has already spread to other areas of the body and by the time it is diagnosed. Whereas the causes of most childhood cancers are unknown, and at the present, childhood cancer cannot be prevented, and families who are or have been in treatment work tirelessly to change these alarming statistics.
Thank you very much, Julie, for reading that proclamation. That being read, do we have a motion to accept and waive the reading of the minutes and accept the consent agenda as listed?
So,
Motion by Rick,
I'll second.
second by Julie. Roll call, please, Jen.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
Don Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving into the item under BZA, Julie Sadler, owner petitioner, 13536 Morris Street, use variance. Jill, if you would, please.
Mr. President, in your packet is the certification. The Board of Zoning Appeals conducted its public hearing on the application for 13536 Morse Street. I'm sorry. The petitioner owner, Julie Sadler, appeared, and by her counsel, Attorney John Hughes, for the noticed public hearing. Remonstrators also appeared on the matter in opposition to the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals conducted the public hearing, receiving the presentation of the owner and petitioner, as well as legal counsel, and the presentation remonstrance of remonstrators in opposition. Such presentations and remonstrances were considered by the BZA. The approved minutes of the August 8th, 2019 BZA public meeting, at which the application was considered, are attached to the certification. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Board of Zoning Appeals certified its unfavorable recommendation to the Town Council for the requested use variance to not allow the petitioner, Julie Sadler, to occupy the building with no privacy screening and to have outdoor storage of trucks, trailers, workboats, shrink-wrap boats, and boat lifts during the non-boating season with screening, based upon the findings set forth hereinafter. The unfavorable recommendation certification was made by a vote of 5 in favor and 0 opposed upon the motion duly made and seconded at the conclusion of the public hearing in the public meeting held on August 8th, 2019. Your petitioner and her attorney are here as well if you had any questions.
Mary Pond. You're welcome to bring up any points.
Yes, my name's Eric Neff. I represent Julie Sadler. I was not present at the last BZA hearing. That was John Hughes.
I see.
Julie has prepared a packet of materials for you for your consideration tonight that addressed all the concerns that were raised by the demonstrators and by the BZA board. The primary one that we have to deal with is the screening behind the building with a 6-foot fence. So Julie, would you go ahead?
Thank you.
Copy machine hard, aren't you? Thanks.
And if I may draw your attention to the drawing that is submitted in the material. You see the concrete block commercial building, and you have Moore Street there to the right. The pink area would be all screened in by fencing. And that's where the outside storage would take place. And we would agree that there would be no outside storage whatsoever until that fence was put into place. And we've addressed that. The 6-foot tall wood fence is highlighted on the drawing. And if you look at the back of the materials that are submitted, there is a photograph of the fence that she's planning to put up around that. That would take, so there would be screening pursuant to the code based on what she is submitting tonight. Essentially, what she's looking for is an occupancy permit so that she can get started doing work inside the building. Right now, that she doesn't even have an occupancy permit. She bought that property back in December of 18, we're going on a year now. What she's willing to do is she'll put gravel in the fenced-in area in the back here. She'll repaint the north side of the building where the paint is flaking this fall. She'll seal coat and stripe the front asphalt parking areas as designated in the fall. And with respect to an issue came up, I guess, at the BZA meeting concerning this oil tank. First of all, the oil tank's not governed by EPA regulations, but she did have that inspected by Westfalls. It's 98% water, it's an above-ground storage, they're gonna pump it out. And she'll have that done this fall as well. So if she could get her occupancy permit, she would like to work inside the building. There'll be no foot traffic whatsoever, just there is a workshop. Her and one employee will park there, there'll be no need for any overnight parking initially until we have all the things listed on the brochure that's handed out as well as the drawing.
Okay.
And that's all we have to add to the findings of the BZA.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Neff. Appreciate that.
Mr. Austin, wouldn't it be logical for the BZA to handle anything that got addressed on the BZA's comments instead of, I mean,
Great minds think alike. This is new evidence, if you will. We didn't have this at the BZA public hearing that was held on this, and it would seem fairly logical that that be considered. You will note in the certification that staff provided you in your package that there was a lot of discussion about this property and about this proposed use and application. 8 or 9 single-spaced pages of minutes reflect a lot of the things that were of concern and presented in evidence and the like. But a remand to the BCA for further review of the new evidence would make a lot of sense.
I'm gonna make a
Otherwise-
motion to do just that. Send it back to the BZA.
When's the next BZA meeting?
The second Thursday of October,
Second Thursday of October.
which would be before the third Tuesday in October,
Got it.
when the council meets again.
Yeah, so October 10th would be the BZA and the council will be October 15th.
Thank you.
I said that.
So we need dates.
I'm sorry.
I'll second that motion by Mr. Parker.
Okay, we have a motion by Greg to send this item back to the BZA and a second by Randy Niemeyer. Roll call, please.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. You will be back at the BZA. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we'll need one copy of that to submit to the BZA, unless Julie, did you have another copy I
Here,
can submit?
I can,
Okay,
here.
thank you.
When I have those copies down, we can just read
You
them.
have that one too.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanna
that'd
make
be
sure they
great.
get what she submitted.
Good idea.
No,
I can give it to them. I can give it to them to present, if you like.
okay. Apparently.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Here you go.
This is for the record.
Thank you.
Jill, just please keep one copy for the
For the
record, if you would,
record.
please.
Mine
will.
too, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into new business. Item number 1, United States Army Corps of Engineers design agreement. This was deferred from August 6th and the 20th, 2019. Jill, if you would start with where we are at with the London Witty and/or any new things that have taken place since our last meeting.
Since your last meeting, we've had discussions on the timing of the funding and the various intricacies within the design agreement. London Witty is doing a analysis of the CEDAT funds as well as the wastewater funds. There have been some preliminary options presented, and the final recommendation would be on the council. The analysis are not 100% complete from your financial advisor as of this evening.
Analysis for the wastewater treatment you're talking about?
For all those funds.
Expenses for future
And
infrastructure?
and as well as the written analysis on the
Mr.
CEDAT
President?
funds.
Yes, Randy.
Between our last meeting and this meeting, we attended a conference in French Lick.
That's correct.
And at that conference, you and I and a couple of other people sat with Sue Hayes, our financial advisor, and we talked about taking a real global look at this that included, like Bob had mentioned, stormwater funds, which weren't a part of the earlier discussions. I
correct.
spoke with Sue today, and I know you've been speaking with her about completing this analysis and making sure that we address all of those things from a management standpoint that need to be addressed. Now, you handed us, Jill, a memo here of kind of a working document of what a payment structure could look like. And I'll say this, that document looks more encouraging than anything I've seen so far. But with Sue still doing some of the analysis for the second part of that especially, which is the feasibility report to go with that design engineering, it looks like the design engineering has a fairly decent plan in place, still
I would
with a
agree.
couple of question marks to fill in. And the feasibility report currently doesn't have any sort of attached payment schedule or funds that it would come out of. So I think, well, the feasibility report down here, it just says all wastewater funding, but we don't really have that stormwater analysis and wastewater analysis to figure out how we would break things up, what the impact would be.
Correct.
So, in talking to Sue on this, she would like to complete this work to make sure that we do this the right way, so that when we make a commitment, it's one that we know that a year from now or 2 years from now, and if there's an economic downturn, when at the end of the year, we gotta make a health insurance payment or do our longevity pay for employees, that we're not sitting here scratching our head thinking how we can uphold our own salary ordinance if we've got to borrow from within, and still get projects done that we're getting done. So there's a lot of mechanisms within these funds. Public Works, a lot of employees are paid in different percentages out of wastewater and stormwater, and all of these things. So it's trying to organize kind of a hornet's nest of information so we can digest it to be able to properly utilize these funds. So that was the conversation that Sue and I had today about this, and I agree that completing the work would be the most prudent thing to do so that we know the exact impact on a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year scale of how this affects everything that we do.
Have a fiduciary responsibility to everybody in this community to do that. You can't just write a blank check on something. But, I mean, considering all that, because I am a resident and taxpayer here, and I'm not against this project, and I kind of resent being accused of that. I'm not against it, I just want to make sure that it can be funded. But the long and the short of it is there's still another multi-million-dollar commitment that has to be, even if this works, that has to be considered. And as far as I know, and honestly, my belief is we're funding this from, we're figuring out a way to fund this with basically no plan. There's been no plan for it up to this point.
From the funds that destroyed the lake, if I may add that
John,
2 cents.
I mean, that is a reach for me. That's a
Okay.
reach for me. And I've heard concerns from other folks I mean, every lakeside neighborhood in this community has been reconstructed in anticipation of this project.
Correct.
But there are people in outlying neighborhoods in this community that are driving to their homes on crater-filled roads.
You're correct. We've taken a proactive approach and went after all of the
And I-
lakeside communities, put in storm drains in anticipation of getting to this point. And
And
while we're not there with the
why
financial
doesn't that
analysis.
investment count towards something? Because I haven't heard anybody say anything about that. And besides all that,
It may.
again, fiduciarily, we've got a responsibility to wait for London Witty to get done with the research that they're doing.
So,
But
I respect
just
that.
because you got a potential to come up with the design money and the engineering money, there's still a multi-million-dollar commitment that I don't think anybody's thinking about,
That's correct, Mr.
if we're all being honest.
And the truth
Which-
is, once we enter into design agreement, then we can go, we don't need to
Does
debate
anybody
this
have a
again like the
projection
last
on how
2
many
months.
million dollars that cost is to get this to fruition? Do you, I
We've been working
recall
on this
12,
for
13 million.
15 years?
12, 13 million? Is that what it is?
That's
our
correct.
matching portion.
That's what, that's our
That's if
matching
we go with the
portion.
LPP.
I'm just trying to be realistic, honest, and
That's right.
financially responsible.
Fact.
So,
Jump in.
Anybody else want to make any comments? Jill, do you have anything to add to
Hey,
Mr.
Ralph's got
Parker's
something.
comments? Yes, Ralph.
This is something that we've been working on for 30 years. We're almost there. I can't tell you the time in that has been spent on this. We're close. We're real close. I think in 2 weeks, you're gonna see 6 of the 7 council people vote in favor of this. But I think we need a couple more weeks to get things in line. Our financial people didn't get back to us as soon as we had expected. The problem is, we push it through tonight. We've got 4 votes sitting here right now that we could do this. What would happen next is we as a town would have to sign papers saying that we can do this. We can't sign those papers because we don't know. We need, to the next council meeting, for our financial people to be able to get back to us to make sure that we can pay the bill. It's not that anybody doesn't want to do it. I was surprised in a way. I thought we were going to move right along with it. But we need to have our ducks in a row. We need 2 more weeks. We've waited 30 years. Can you give me 2 weeks?
Ralph, those are good comments. Just for transparency's sake, the memo that Jill circulated to us includes on that Design engineering, cost due to core $422,800. Includes sources from CLIA, which Bob gave us this letter, CEDAT funds, utilizing the farm lease funds from that property, stormwater, which is pending analysis, and wastewater, which is pending analysis. And you start to put together those things as the first portion of it, it gives us a little better picture. So you can see, Bob, there's kind of there's a broad approach that's taking place here, and people are starting to think in the direction of really putting together a sustainable business model for it, which is all I wanted. I like Greg, I support this project, I want to see it happen. There's been a lot of effort put in by a lot of people in this community, but like what Ralph said, prudence is necessary in these kind of things. And Bob, in this letter, you don't have anywhere in here a number. If we're going to put it in a non-reverting fund, we need a number so we can draft a resolution.
I don't have the exact number because I don't know the interest. It's approximately $195,000.
So is there a way that you could get a number to our clerk treasurer so a resolution could be drafted so at the next meeting we can create that non-reverting fund and then put the money in it?
Well, we already have the non-reverting
We have a
fund.
non-reverting
Mr.
Oh, we have it
fund.
created?
Yeah, it's created. We created it a few years ago, so
So we do
just
need a
to deposit.
resolution, correct, Dave?
We do.
Okay, so
That's
if you
correct.
could find that number, communicate it to Jen?
I don't have the exact number, so the truth.
Okay,
So it's approximately over $195,000. Between 194 and 195 is what we believe it is.
so would you need direction, Dave, to draft that resolution?
I would, and if it's not necessary for a resolution, it's a dais vote. I'll
Okay.
let you know that.
Okay.
Well, I would make a motion to accept the CLIA funds as a part of this agenda item. Cedar Lake Enhancement Association is pledging to donate the funds that are in our Pledge to Dredge account at Providence Bank to the Ecosystem Restoration Project non-reverting fund. Those funds will be available after October 24, 2019, when the CD matures. So I would make a motion to accept those funds into that non-reverting fund.
With a resolution being made, or?
If necessary.
If necessary, a resolution being drafted.
Thank you. So we do have a motion to accept the CLIA commitment to the eco project. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ralph. Roll call, please.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Thanks,
Motion
Bob, for
accepting
putting
the money.
that together, and kind of dovetailing again on what Ralph said, with our financial advisor being so close to completing the full-scale analysis of this and giving us the opportunity to really do this the right way, I would make a motion to defer this item to the October 1st meeting.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to defer the United States Army Corps of Engineer Design Agreement by Randy and a second by Greg. Before we do roll call, I would just like to state that I've had constant contact with our engineer, Kay Whitlock, who's been working on this project for quite some time. And I've also had lots of communication with Colonel Reisinger from the Army Corps of Engineers. While we are trying very desperately to get this thing approved, and the last few meetings we've had some serious debates up here. We might still have time to make the 2020 budget. It's got to be submitted, I think, 1st of December, if I'm not mistaken. So we do still have some time, so we do have some hope that there is a slim chance that we could see something from the funding that was somewhat earmarked years ago. I think it was, Jill, 11.7 million. So that's our goal, that's our mission, and that's our objective. So I just want,
How much has to be local of that 11.7? Isn't
That's
that a
their-
match?
that's their grant.
That's a match though, right?
We have
There
to-
has be a match from the
50-50.
community. 50-50?
Yeah.
So
We've got to do
this-
11.7
we're-
too.
I think it's
For the
a fair
locally
question,
preferred
a fair
plan,
question
yeah.
for somebody to ask tonight.
it's fair.
Where's that other $12 million gonna come from? Is there gonna be a referendum to raise taxes?
Can't be.
It,
No.
well, then where's it gonna
Okay,
come
for
from? Is there a
example-
plan for that?
Well.
That's what
Greg,
I'm asking.
You betcha. Good question. Locally preferred plan is just that. Okay, there is a chance we may have to divert back to the NER plan if in the event going after grants through the Indiana Department of Natural Resources and other maybe organizations and or companies, et cetera, perhaps private-public partnerships, who knows? The bottom line is that's a story for another day once we approve the design agreement and we have a
John, could
substantial
I
plan
butt in
to
on
move
that
forward.
just for a second?
You may.
Last week, Jill, Rick, and myself met with Mr. Vlaskovsky. We also met with Mike Ellsworth. We also met, I met with Rick Niemeyer. Everybody is on board.
Have they made a financial commitment?
They are waiting for
They
us
can't.
to make an ask.
Okay,
Bob?
fair enough.
That's a
Bob,
catch-22.
Just a minute. Bob, could you stand up for a second? Sure. I am under the impression that right now, what we need is the commitment from the town. Once our commitment is made, is when Clea and other people can get involved, and that's where quite a bit of our money is gonna be coming from.
We will go to different foundations. We still have our nonprofit number, so a lot of those corporations can still donate to CLIA. And then once we receive money, we'll do the same thing we did tonight.
Yeah.
Just like I did, now those were smaller, $5,000, $10,000, $1,500, commitments that were made years ago that we had in the bank. But now we're going to go to foundation. Typically, they want to know, right, so we've got 3 million, approximately land, match it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how part of that works. Had numerous discussions. I told you that, you know, I know Randy made a comment about downstate at the last meeting. Well, now we have a meeting with the speaker set up. And I've been told many times by someone who knows how that works. We need to make a commitment of what we're gonna do before we can stick our hands on it.
And in order for us to make that commitment, we gotta have all the facts.
Well, I get that now.
Yep.
But Randy, my point is, we know since April, we know the numbers since 2012, minimum, of what those numbers were. They haven't changed.
Mhm.
They will probably change when we go into design, because Kay told me today explicitly that she believes those numbers are very, very high and inflated, and we'll be able to trim those down, especially if we have a seat at the table with the core in design. We'll be able to pick and choose the right way to do it.
Bob, I agree with you on all of this stuff. My thing is, I just wanna make sure that when we're making decisions here to use public money that ratepayers have paid into, like you said, your stormwater utility, wastewater utility, all those things, that we have all the facts, that's all. Once we have all those things, I'm very comfortable if our financial advisor says, hey, this is a plan that we can work with, let's do it. Ralph is right, you'll have support, a lot of it.
I understand, now just, you know, my point all along is we should have looked at this sooner, so we were ready for this date.
I brought this up in 2017 in a public meeting, that there needed to be action on this.
Okay? Well, then, you know, we should have looked at it harder prior to
Mhm.
now.
I don't disagree with you.
Because now we're running out of time for 2020. And while we have the right Colonel in there, who's pro-project big time, we've got the council members in here that are pro. I'm just saying, let's move as fast as we can. If we wouldn't need to do this for a town, you know, you all know what it's gonna do.
You're absolutely correct, Bob. We've educated Mr. Niemeyer, Mr. Aylesworth. Both of those gentlemen went up to Chicago with us, as have other individuals. And no one sitting here nor out there is getting any younger. We're real close. I think that we still have some time to possibly get into 2020. I did have that conversation with the Colonel, et cetera. Mr. Austin, do you want to add anything?
No, I think the comments made here are valid, completely valid. There's been a tremendous amount of work done on the validation of funding source, and mostly, from my perspective on your behalf, based upon the law, 42 USC 1462 mandates that we have the funds sufficient to pay damages if there's a shortfall or a default. So that's being looked at. Your financial advisor, your town administrator, our office are all working on that.
Very good.
To make certain.
Very good. Well, we do have a motion and a second on the table. Roll call, please.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes. We will address this hopefully in 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, that are here for the Eco Restoration Design Agreement Project. Moving into second item for new business, temporary utility easements, Woods of Cedar Creek, 14131 Rockland Street, 141 Rockland Street and 14133 Rockland Street, as well as 14143 Rockland. Let's wait 1 minute or two before we continue on with this item, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming, by the way.
The front row's open if anybody wants to move up.
Yeah.
Just like church.
There, you got a good seat now.
Okay. And no more standing room only, right? All right, let's move on. Temporary utility easements. I already read the descriptions. Jill, if you would, please.
At your March 5th council meeting, your attorney presented to you easement documentation in form and format for a Woods of Cedar Creek drainage project. That project had to be, actually was shrunk. Easements were changed and modified. This is for some grading work that will alleviate some drainage issues. Those easement documents have finally been executed and will need your final check off for the temporary utility easements.
Okay, thank you. Any questions up here? Mr. Austin, do you have anything?
No, that's exactly what's going on.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Julie. Second.
I'll second it.
Second by Ralph. Roll call, please.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving into item number 3, permanent utility easement, Havenwood. 12516 Havenwood to pass, 2518 Havenwood to pass, 12517 Marsh Landing Parkway, as well as 12515 Marsh Landing Parkway.
Mr. President, these were originally temporary construction utility easements to do some stormwater work on a project that came out of your stormwater board. Again, presented on March 5th council meeting. These have had to be upgraded to permanent utility easements as a structure will need to be put in place and then maintained by the town. The documentation was completed by your attorney, and those documents have been executed by all the parties and need your final check off. And then these utility easements will be recorded as these are permanent utility easements.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions, comments by Mr. Austin?
All good.
Okay.
Just so.
I would like to add that we'd like to thank the people that gave these easements. Whenever you give a permanent utility easement, you don't need to, but that was a good nature, and it's going to help the betterment of the community, so I think that was great. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to accept the permanent utility easements.
Motion by
Havenwood.
Randy, thank you.
I'll second.
My right ear works better. Julie gets the second on that. Roll call, please. Jen?
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving forth, item number 4, we have on the agenda a memorandum of understanding. I'm not sure who wants to describe this. Jill, if you want to start, and or
Defer this one to Randy.
Mr. Niemeyer, if you would please give us a brief
This is your
explanation.
handout.
Well, thank you. Last week,
It's this one there.
Monday through Wednesday, I went to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, to visit with a company called Carperi Canada. They are a subsidiary company of the Morrison Group of Companies. They are a real estate development company located in British Columbia. They have expressed over the last 2 years some interest in this community since we rolled out the presentation in 2017. Word traveled very quickly around the globe, actually. And so these people have expressed some interest in developing an agriculturally based industrial park somewhere within the town boundaries of Cedar Lake. Right now in Canada, they have a project portfolio that's worth more than $5 billion in various stages of development. They focus a lot on agricultural production. They like to take local agricultural products, process them into finished products for export. So that is their main focus of their development. This could bring to Cedar Lake upwards of $500 million of economic improvements, which also would generate a lot of tax revenue to pay for projects like what we talked about tonight. In this memorandum of understanding, it's basically memorializing, in a very general terms, the style and manner and framework of a business relationship that we would have with this company. It doesn't go into details because there are many details to work out. But it's essentially putting the two of us together at a table to hash out all the details of how to facilitate this type of development and economic improvement throughout the community. It's a very exciting time for Cedar Lake to have people like this take recognition in this town as a place to locate their development, but also their U.S. headquarters. I talked with the owner of this company, and that is his desire, is to build their headquarters here in Cedar Lake. So their future developments in the United States will be headquartered right here. During the meetings I had with me, Matt Sultanovitz from the Indiana Economic Development Commission, he flew out there with me, and he talked about how the state of Indiana would also support this project on the back end with assisting companies with relocation costs, workforce development, and marketing of the business park. So it's extremely exciting to be reporting on something like this, considering how much effort was put into that original seed that was planted in 2007 in that comprehensive master plan of economic development in Cedar Lake and the feasibility of that, and now to see it grow into an international recognized plan that we sit here today in 2019, and to consider a memorandum of understanding with a legitimate international developer, and it also fulfills some of the governor's initiatives to bring foreign investment dollars into the state of Indiana. So this is on many levels something that fits the framework of economic development in the state of Indiana, the town of Cedar Lake, and South Lake County with its rich agricultural history. So these are great things and very exciting times. They're a motivated developer. They have some goals to start groundbreaking as early as next year. So we look to help them along on that path through this relationship that we're developing here tonight.
Thank you. Randy?
John, can I turn it over to Mr. Austin? He's done his investigative team. Obviously, we want to vet any
You may.
potential partners. Mr. Austin?
We did some background check on the Morrison Group and Carpier Canada. We found at least 57,000 page hits of this company, showing a history back into early 1990s. We did not see a single negative article. They bring successful projects all over the western United States and part of Canada. They came out of Hong Kong initially and relocated, matriculated, if you will, to Vancouver, British Columbia. It was very encouraging to see kind of the reports and the information, and without having any negative spin and hits on them. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't any. There are
That's right.
57,000 hits. That's a lot. We didn't look at them all. But what we saw was a pattern, and that pattern was consistent with what Randy's indicated he encountered when he visited personally. And when they came here, you saw representatives of that company and that group when they came here to visit. So, you know, you have a lot of initial background to feel comfortable and confident in.
And I was toured around two sites, two redevelopment sites of theirs, one of them called Duck Island, right along the Fraser River in Vancouver. And it is a $2.5 million multifaceted development that includes hotels, offices, public space, bars, restaurants. It's an unbelievable vision, and they're making it happen. I don't know if I've ever seen such big thinkers really be able to pull off what they pull off. It's and the partnerships they have with small communities throughout Canada to utilize local agricultural products to their maximum potential has also been fantastic for local economies, so,
You bet.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, I shared this with Randy this afternoon in preparing for tonight. It appears that they only hire and retain and accumulate among their executive staff the best and the brightest. We checked out as much of that as was possible also. And you have really smart people who are really motivated and energized, and success follows. You have a pretty good feel about things, and that's what appeared.
Mr. Austin, we have a resolution and a memorandum of understanding. Do we have a resolution number for this,
That would be from your clerk.
Jen?
Yeah, there's no number on
I'd
this.
have to look it up, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
And I suggested it be the next numeric number that's on the
Yeah.
clerk's books,
1343.
and it be inserted.
Well, there's an
I think it's
ordinance
gonna be
number.
1343.
That's an
Mike.
ordinance.
No, that's an ordinance.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's separate.
Okay.
The number can be assigned later, right?
You can. You
So
can correct-
moved.
Is that a motion to approve the resolution?
Yeah. Sounds good. Might generate some money.
So we have a motion.
God knows we're gonna need some around here.
But that's
We
for the
have a
resolution, not the
motion
MOU.
by Greg Parker to approve a memorandum of
No, that's the
understanding.
resolution. Yeah,
Resolution
MOU
of-
is something different.
Mr. President, the resolution authorizes execution and entry into the memorandum.
Sorry, resolution. We have a motion by Greg Parker
Second.
for the resolution. We have a second by Randy Niemeyer.
I've got a question. Dave, you said that they were out west from here? They've done some developments out west?
They've done nothing in the United States, they've done everything in Canada.
Oh.
Western Canada.
Moose Jaw, Canada, Duck Island,
Oh.
Vancouver,
Tisdale, Canada, Surrey, Canada.
Okay.
right.
They've got several dozen projects going right now.
Ralph, we had meetings with these guys. What was it, Randy? You, myself, and Julie,
It was
2
early
years ago?
2018, and then
Yeah.
again this year.
That's right.
And
And then Matt, is it Matt from the
Matt from the IEDC.
IEDC also was present here in the town of Cedar Lake for one of the meetings. I think, Randy, you joined us by phone
Yeah.
on that call. And it's certainly encouraging. They like the geographical location to Chicago and what Indiana brings from a business standpoint. So, yeah, it was, it's very interesting to say the least.
And thank you, Randy, for your work on this. I mean, this sounds like too good to be true, but it is true.
We had 10 hours of meetings over 2 days, but it wasn't all meetings. I'll show some people some pictures, but I had a great opportunity to eat braised duck heads while I was there, so I felt like Andrew Zimmern from Bizarre Foods. So I enjoyed their culture a little bit, too.
Okay, roll call, please, for the resolution.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0.
Mr. President, I'd like to, now that the resolution's been approved,
Please.
pending a number being attached, I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
We have a motion by Randy Niemeyer for the
I'll second.
memorandum of understanding. And we have a second by Greg Parker. Roll call, please.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. I might add that a memorandum of understanding also needs to be taken care of with the Corps when we get, not if, when we get the design agreement inked. Thank
So
you.
once this is signed, I will scan a copy of that and send it right away to Carperi headquarters, and that way they can begin the discussions that they need
Please
to
let
begin.
Jill send it so it goes from the town of Cedar
Yeah.
Lake.
Well, it'd be from my Cedar Lake email, but I can send it to
Yeah,
Jill.
it's best if Jill
Fine.
sends it, please. Moving on, item number 5, Wicker Meadows Survey Proposal. Jill, please.
Mr. President, one of the things we had discussed in Wicker Meadows was the writing of a letter by your engineer. Your engineer, to write that letter, needs some topographical survey work in the Wicker Meadows subdivision area. Enclosed in your packet is a proposal from DVG to do that survey work in a lump sum fee of $3,800. And it would take them approximately within 20 business days to complete that survey work.
And that was for the Wicker Meadows,
For the Wicker Meadows.
off of the survey, okay.
Mhm.
Any comments or questions to Jill's idea
Make a motion to approve that.
for DVG
Yes.
to do the,
I don't want to wait
Study?
anymore on this.
we have a
We need to
motion by
move.
Randy
I'll second.
and a second by Rick. Roll call, please, Jen.
Greg Parker,
No.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 5-1. Item number 6, interim police chief. Jill, please.
Mr. President, these are the documents that were submitted to you.
Okay. We received a letter from Mr. Caper. Mr. Caper, would you like to take the microphone and either read the letter or give us an explanation, please, on behalf of the Police Commission?
I don't have that particular letter, but you got the letter today.
I have both.
Okay.
Do you want?
Mr. Colson is leaving us as chief of police.
Okay.
And, we did have a meeting, an emergency meeting to accept his resignation, this past Monday. And, in that meeting, we decided that Carl Brittingham would become, the interim chief of police upon your approval.
Okay. So then the motion would be to accept the resignation and do the interim police chief of Carl Birmingham. Yeah, I don't know. Well, Chief, it's, thank you for your service to our community the last couple of years. We wish you well and whatever plans you have, moving forward. And, we hope you come back and see us and visit and all that good stuff. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And if I can address, the council.
You most certainly
Yes.
can.
the residents, it's been an honor, a privilege for me to be here. I certainly appreciate the opportunity, that you afforded me, to serve this community as well as the department. And to the residents, I thank you for welcoming me early on when I first walked in the door here and continue to show that support. It's a great community. She's very proud of not only the police department, but all the efforts that have been put forth by public officials that are here trying to make things better and move forward. So I do thank you, and it's been a great 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate all the work you did, all the resources you brought into this town, and just the new perspective, and I'm sorry that we lost you so soon. Good luck in your new position.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Chief Colson and to approve the appointment of interim chief of police as Carl Brittingham.
Okay, we have a motion by Randy, as stated,
I'll second it.
and we have a second by Ralph. Roll call, Jen, when you are ready.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving into reports, thanks again, Chief. Moving into reports, Town Council. Does anybody have anything that they would like to discuss that has not already been discussed tonight?
I've got something for those of you and you that are going to be here in the future. I would caution you to double, triple, quadruple check anything that comes in here with a proposal from American Structure Point in the future. Or maybe if there is some way to just not have them eligible anymore, but it seems like everything that they've been involved with has either been substandard or screwed up. And if we're gonna continue, obviously, we're gonna
And
hopefully
Greg,
continue to
Greg,
have
as we learned
infrastructure
tonight, they're also working on behalf of the utility for utility location coordination.
That's awesome, isn't it?
The whole thing is rigged.
It is rigged.
It's disappointing and unacceptable.
Thank you.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else have any other items under Town Council? Okay, let's move on. Mr. Austin, please.
No reports.
No reports, thank you. Jen?
I'm still working on the 2020 budget,
Okay,
looking through the line items. I will be posting, at the end of this week, the public hearing notice in Gateway, and the public hearing will be conducted at your October 1st meeting.
okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a public meeting last Friday night. to discuss the discuss the budget, so went quite well, so that's what she just reported on.
That was for John.
Town Administrator, Jill, what else?
I have no report this evening.
No, I wanna, Julie did. Okay, very good. Written communication, we have the Christopher B. Burke Engineering Report. Any new highlights on that, Jill?
One of the things to notice is Don and I had a conversation with the representatives regarding the Next Level Trail grant that we had applied for previously.
Uh-huh.
While we didn't get that grant, we were given some highlights and information for a resubmittal, and we will be working on moving that forward. That's for your Founder's Creek Trail.
Okay.
One of the things since the last time we applied and now is there is another parcel that the town now owns. So we will be working towards applying for grant funding through Next Level Trails.
Okay, thank you. And what about building permits? Any new updates there?
The report is enclosed there. Currently, as of the end of August, since we haven't had a meeting since the end of August, you're at 136 new home permits with a value of just over 24 million and 357 alteration permits with a value of just under 3.9 million.
Very good, thank you. And again, public comment for anything that you may have, if you're in the audience, please.
Hello, my name is Mike Baker. I'm at 12802 Colfax Street, Crystal Oaks. With this runabout, they're detouring traffic down Fairbanks and MacArthur School's right there. There seems to be a lot of people not yielding to pedestrians. Also, they're speeding. There's only one crossing guard, and they usually take care of passing the kids across. What is that? You guys put up some yield for pedestrian signs over by Sundays by the lake. We would request that maybe you guys think about doing something like that. Right there.
The portable signs that they've recently placed?
Something they can take down, or there's some speed bumps on certain roads. I think if you continue on Flines Foster,
Mhm.
they have a couple speed bumps there that might help. Or get another crossing guard to help these kids cross. And with all the excess traffic, Vermillion and Fairbanks are deteriorating road-wise pretty bad. Are there any plans in place to fix that once all this stuff with the roundabout is taken care of?
I can answer that,
Yeah,
no.
go ahead, Greg, please.
No?
No.
Yes and no.
Well, actually, it's been discussed.
We're
here.
trying to
me the
fix
yes.
it correctly. Right now, about, what is it, Greg, 7 years ago, we resurfaced Vermillion?
It has been
But we
discussed
only-
in meetings, but there
we-
hasn't been a plan.
That's correct.
Put in place.
And we know we need to reconstruct it with storm drains. Because if you don't dig up the earth and put limestone underneath it, no matter what you do with repaving new asphalt,
Yeah.
it crumbles as soon as the road, or the spring rains come and or the thaw, so,
The answer's still
That's-
no.
that's the question.
Soft shoulder over
Yeah.
there, and that's why
yeah.
it breaks.
We recognize and we're aware, but it needs to absolutely be done correctly. We may have to do a temporary fix before we get to that true reconstruction.
Okay.
It's not being ignored. It's kind of a main thoroughfare from an east-west standpoint.
Yeah, and especially right now, like I said, there's a lot of additional traffic going that way, and people are actually using Hilltop too, which I know you guys have heard about that
That's right.
past meetings, so, all right.
Your
next-
points are well taken. I'm going to ask Chief Colson to talk to the new interim chief, if you would, sir. I'd appreciate that very much, and thank you for coming to the meeting.
Help me understand, though, who's been talking about fixing these roads after this construction's over with? Has there been meetings?
Oh, yeah, well, in fact,
committees, or-
I'll just state it. We tried to utilize the 300 and was it maybe even close to $400,000 that we were going to gain through this NDOT project by not closing, or by closing the roundabout. We tried to ask NDOT if we could use that money to resurface Vermillion before the project started. and unfortunately, it was denied because it was outside the scope. Jill, do you have anything to add to that, based off those meetings we had?
No, outside of the scope requires additional, NEPA and wetland and all of that investigation work. So we tried going through NERC for that funding. One of the things Tim and I are looking at is costs on milling and resurfacing to at least bring those roads back to a slightly better condition than they were before the project started.
That's correct.
Knowing that they do still need full reconstruction for stormwater. We are working on, as part of Don's report, while there really is no update, Sue and our financial advisors, Jennifer, are working on closing out and doing the final numbers on all of the road bonds. If there should happen to be any funding left in the road bond, we would then confer with our attorneys, David Austin, as well as Barnes and Thorburn, on those, if we can use any of those funds immediately outside of those projects
Right.
to repair and/or repave roads that were impacted by that construction project. So
Excellent.
that closeout is taken, is occurring behind the scenes and seeing if any of those funds are available.
Good.
And then looking at milling and resurfacing, Foster as well as Fairbanks and Vermillion.
You know, one of the
what?
greatest things that we had here,
I'm gonna be
Greg,
expecting reports every meeting on that for the rest of the year.
Greg, one of the most effective things that we had here for a few years was a committee that met periodically and reported to the council, met with staff, met with engineers about road projects. Unfortunately, we disbanded those committees, but we used to have that, now we don't have any information. So, that's where that went.
No, that's not true. VS Engineering just did a new report
No,
not too long
but-
ago
but
that
but
we
our-
paid
Our committee would meet
in
with the,
excess of
with the-
$20,000.
with the plans of the community, and we would get reports at least several times a year on discussions with engineers, plans for roads. Now we don't get reports, as Greg
We
said.
have work session once a month. Jill, will you please bring that at the next work session?
Yes.
The road report, so we can have
We
this
got rid of the
discussion.
committees to appease someone who's no longer here,
Yes.
and now we have no information flowing, so,
We have it in
just
our
saying,
building.
just saying.
We just need to
It's not here.
uncover it and discuss it.
It needs
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Point well taken, Mr. Niemeyer.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody in the public? Father John, please.
Another prayer, thank you. Oh.
Maybe. Father John, Kowalczyk, 10717 West, 134th Place, Cedar Lake, Indiana. To say I am dismayed is an understatement. You good people sitting up here are the government of the town of Cedar Lake. You were elected, you swore an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the state of Indiana, and the ordinances and so on and so forth of the town of Cedar Lake. To hear you, the plural you, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, we don't have this, we don't have that, is dismaying to someone sitting out here. Because we elected you to, well, figure stuff out for us. We go through and comments are made, bickering on the dais. Gentlemen and ladies, it's gotta stop. It just has to. You wanna bicker and you wanna, that's why you have your executive sessions and there's no record keeping and you can yell and scream and do all you want. But you are elected to govern. And we elected you to do that, to do what is best for the town of Cedar Lake, upholding all the rules and regulations of all those above you. I implore you to, well, do your job. If I don't do my job, I will get removed.
Fact.
Pure and simple.
Can I ask
One
what your
person who's gonna remove me, my bishop is gonna say, Father, it's time to go. Well, it's time to go.
What are you referring to, Father John, with bickering?
Oh, come on.
Are you talking about debate that we've had over finances?
No,
That's called public debate.
public debate is fine, but when you start insulting each other with comments from one end to the other end, when personal items and whatnot get thrown at people, the one night, in particular, Mr. Miller and Mr. Carnahan had quite the duo going. As an example, both apologized at the end of the meeting, but is that what we elected you to do? I would hope not. I am concerned. I'm sure others are concerned, and since this is public comment, I give you my comment.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Anybody else with public comment? Mr. Bill, name and address for the record, sir.
Bill Kuhn, 13951 Hughesman, Cedar Lake. One good thing this council has done is they participate in the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission, which I have given Joe some posters to hand out to all the departments for their upcoming manager training seminar. So what this town has done is they've trained a few of their managers and top people, and registration is due by September 20th, and the event is September 25th over at Avalon Manor. I encourage your department heads to send somebody, or at least to send your trainers there for a refresher course. On that event, we're gonna get them back, 'cause we're gonna promise to start it on time, end it on time, give them a box lunch so they can take it back to their job. And we're gonna make their time as valuable as possible and teach as much as possible. I know there's also training coming up next year for council members and elected officials, and certainly we'll let you know about that stuff. But I do applaud the town for being one of the Northwest Indiana towns that sends their people to this training. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on what's going on with that.
And
Thank you.
thank you, Bill, for being involved with this. these
Thanks,
years.
Bill.
Yep, thank you very much. Anybody else? Public comment? Going once, twice, public comment is closed. And we will move into adjournment of the meeting at approximately 8:30.
We have a utility board meeting.
And we'll start that in a few minutes. If anybody has any questions for us, feel free. If not, in about 5 minutes or so, we will start the utility board meeting.
Every single one of these signs.
Okay, bye, Joe.
Hey, Mike,
Because I.
good, you?
No,